The Amityville Horror is known worldwide. The iconic house where the supposed paranormal events took place is instantly recognizable. Books and movies have kept the story of the Amityville horror case in the public eye. But controversy has always swirled around the story. The true story of one of the most well-known and supposed paranormal events is next on The Ghost Discoverer.
Is probably one of the most haunted homes in the world.
16 years after the events of the Herman poltergeist case, Amityville took its place as the most well-known and documented paranormal event. Some say the curse of an American Indian chief whose tribe was massacred was the cause of the disturbances on Long Island. Ronnie DeFeo Jr. walked into a local bar in Amityville and began yelling that someone had murdered his family. The bar patrons all jumped up and immediately went with DeFeo to his house at 112 Ocean Avenue, only a few blocks away. When the small group entered the home, nothing could have prepared them for what they would see next. 6 members of the DeFeo family were murdered, shot in their beds. Ronnie DeFeo, now under police protection from what was initially thought to be a mob hit on his family, eventually confessed to the murders after his story began to fall apart. Ronnie DeFeo was found guilty on all 6 counts of murder. His version of events that night would change multiple times before his trial. He claimed that his sister Dawn, who was one of the victims found shot, was actually the murderer. He claimed that his lawyer forced him to confess. One of the versions of his story included being possessed by a dark entity. It was this version of his story that sensationalized the case even more. Police noted early on in the investigation that it was odd the neighbors had not reported hearing gunshots. The rifle used in the murders was incredibly loud when fired, yet neighbors didn't recall hearing any shots that night. Also, police found it strange that the bodies of the DeFeo family were all lying face down in their beds. Even though the family were spread across 3 floors, why didn't any of them attempt to escape? No silencer was found for the rifle, and no sign of sedatives were discovered in the victims' bodies. No sign of the bodies being moved. The Lutz family found a bargain to start a new chapter in their lives. George and Kathy Lutz knew the house at 112 Ocean Avenue was too good to be true. After the real estate agent told them about the DeFeo family murders, they decided it wouldn't be a problem and quickly accepted the offer on the home.
I described the house as charming the first time I saw it, because that's what I thought of it.
Ian and I were saying, Kathy, do you believe this? And she said, no, I don't believe this. It's a lovely house.
They would only live there for 1 month. On the day the Lutz moved in, a priest arrived at the home. As the Lutz family were unpacking, he made his way through the home, carrying out the rites. As he entered the sewing room, the priest recalled feeling extremely uneasy. He sprinkled holy water in the room, and suddenly heard a voice from behind him saying, "Get out."
I also sprinkling holy water, and I heard a rather deep voice behind me saying, "Get out."
Startled, the priest left the room and made his way to the front door. As he did, he informed the Lutz of what had happened and pleaded with them not to use the sewing room for any reason. As they were settling in, the entire family quickly became aware of a change in George. He began having mood swings and started losing weight. George also began having feeling of queasiness in the home and was unable to stay warm. George woke up in the middle of the night every night at the same time, 3:15 a.m., the time it's believed the DeFeo murders took place. The family encountered backed-up toilets that would turn the water black. Doors would slam and heavy footsteps could be heard throughout the house at all hours. The Lutzes would also claim the walls oozed black, gooey substances, and flies would suddenly swarm them in the house. Kathy Lutz said she was folding laundry one day, and an entity she described as female suddenly embraced her and then disappeared. The Lutz's 9-year-old daughter, Missy, began to speak with an imaginary friend, something she hadn't done until moving into the house, according to the family. Jody, a shape-shifting entity, would take the form of a large pig with red eyes. Finally, the Lutz family had had enough, and 1 month after moving into the Amityville house, they dropped their belongings, rushed to the car, and drove away. The events that took place that night as they left was never publicly revealed. According to George Lutz, it was too frightening to recall. He did, however, say that as the family was leaving, a ghostly form at the top of the stairs looked directly at him and pointed at him as he closed the door. Shortly after the Lutzes fled their home, they agreed to several interviews. A reporter and news anchor for a local television network contacted the Lutz family. George Lutz was asked to return to the Amityville house in an attempt to extend his story. Ed and Lorraine Warren were then contacted to investigate the Amityville house with a small group that included 2 local television reporters and a psychic medium. During the investigation, there were several instances which could be considered paranormal, but were only experienced through the Warrens. A local cameraman who was with the group did begin having chest pains during the investigation, but he quickly recovered. A seance was held by the Warrens, and Lorraine is quoted as declaring an evil presence was with them. After looking through the pictures taken during the investigation, what appears to be a small boy is seen in one of the shots. Nobody with the group that night reported seeing any children in the house. As famous as the Amityville horror case has become, the question of whether or not it was a hoax has been asked more than once. Of course, the negative energy of a house where multiple murders took place will always linger. The strange circumstances of the Amityville horror case will no doubt remain one of the most entertaining stories of murder and ghosts. It will also continue to be a popular topic among paranormal investigators. The Amityville horror case also catapulted Ed and Lorraine Warren into the spotlight. But their next case would lead to a Hollywood movie franchise.